Good on you, Jared. Our special guest tonight is one of the most underrated players in the game. He's a legend of Port Adelaide. Kane Cornes joins us. Hello and welcome again to On the Couch following round 16 with the Swans back on top of the ladder for the first time this season. In fact, plenty to talk about, in particular who's going to knock them off. Kane Cornes to join us, one of the legends of the modern era. He's got an incredible best and fairest record. We'll talk about that down the track. But Jason Dunstall and Mike Sheen are with us, boys. A lot of feedback, Jason, on your jacket and shirt combination, and good to see you backing up. You've been in good form.
That's pink, isn't it?
It is.
It's mine. Pink's mine, you know that.
Sorry, mate.
Mike, what took your fancy over the weekend, or what got up your goat?
Well, Jared and Jason, I watched a 2-hour slog between West Coast and Sydney and Perth yesterday.
Swans on the menu early. 25
free kicks paid. My unofficial audit says that they missed 40, maybe 60. Now, I saw Dean Cox and Mike Pike gave a 2-hour impersonation of World Championship Wrestling.
Yes.
Then we went forward, and there's Buddy and Eric McKenzie. Now, they played so tightly, there was 10 minutes after the final siren before they disentangled themselves, right? The four blokes, the two ruckmen and these two, shared 4 free kicks for the day. And I reckon there were 40 occasions of incorrect disposal. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to umpire this game, but I think it's now impossible. I don't know what the umpires did wrong, but you can't have what we saw yesterday and generate only 25 free kicks.
Is the difficulty in working out who initiates the contact?
Yep, but that's what the third umpire does, doesn't he? That's what the bloke who's in the forward line looks across at Buddy and McKenzie and says one of them made the first contact.
Well, there's going to be a symposium on umpiring in October. I don't think it's going to go through until November, Mike. And clearly you can put that up, and there's no doubt that prior opportunity will be on it as well. Looking forward to Kane Cornes and what he's got to say about it. Jason, what took your fancy?
Well, Jared, I was actually a little undecided, so I've decided to focus on 2 issues tonight because I couldn't make a choice. Ooh. First up, I've got a message for the players of the St Kilda Football Club. Please don't kill off one of the greats of our game. If you saw the way the ball was delivered to Nick Riewoldt, he did incredibly well not to lose his composure. The number of times they kicked it directly to his opponent on a platter, and he didn't lose his body language, he didn't lose his work rate, and most of the time he had to turn around and chase the bloke they just kicked it to. Yep. I felt for him, and I'm just thinking, please, you'll kill the poor man's spirit. Just a couple of nice kicks. Give him a chop out.
Isn't he used to it? It's been going on for 3 years.
It's been going on too long, and they've got to fix it. But on a positive note, we've heard a lot of talk about a young kid for the Gold Coast Suns called Jack Martin.
We have.
I'll tell you why the Raps are so big on him. There's a little passage of play here. He's a right footer. He's in traffic, doesn't get phased, buys himself a bit of time, turns and off one step on the left, threads a pass underneath to the leading player. So you can understand why they're so keen for this bloke to develop, and some people are even saying he could be better than Jake O'Meara.
Exciting times for the Gold Coast. They're on the menu as well. Tommy Hafer used to say, Mike, that good players play well in the wet. And I was privileged yesterday to be down at the Cattery, and I saw 2 of the great players, Stevie J and Jimmy Bartell, put on an absolute clinic. Jimmy Bartell was on the wing closest to the commentary position, so I saw more of his. We're showing you some of the stuff that stood out on camera, but some of the nuances, some of the deft touches inside were quite incredible by Jimmy Bartell. He was just a treat to watch.
Nice. Yeah.
There was a little backwards kick. There's been a couple of handballs. There's a couple of taps on. He taught everybody how to play in the wet, and the kick off the ground is just as important as any other long bomb.
Yeah, they're happy when it rains, aren't they, those two?
No, absolutely.
Let's take a look at the AFL ladder, Mike, because for the first time this year, the Swans are on top. You're going to have a good look at why they got there again this season, but something different, word association. Just whip through the top 10 for us. Firstly, Sydney.
Soaring, rightful premiership favourites.
And the Hawks.
Wobbly, worrying.
And Port Adelaide.
Port is stumbling, but I think they're entitled to a letdown.
What about Freo? Are they charging to the top?
Freo are building and looming, Jared.
OK, challenge for you because you've been potting Geelong all year.
Good run home, but jury's still out for me, Jace.
Yeah,
right now, Collingwood are wobbly. Can they hang on?
Collie wobbles, you're saying? I'd prefer to go for shaky. I think they're on the precipice, Jared. They play Essendon on Sunday. They wouldn't want to lose that one.
Righto, you're expanding on your one words, but that's all right. You've been around long enough to do that. To North Melbourne. This will challenge you because
will.
you have potted them every
have.
second week as have I.
And you know what I'm also good at is changing my mind. They're coming and they can win their last 7.
Okay,
Correct.
are they justifiable in the top 4? Are they a credible top 4 spot? Because their coach didn't think so last year.
If they win their
week.
last 7 on top of a couple in a row, they'll be credible in the top 4.
What about the Gold Coast?
Gold Coast depends.
Okay, that's very.
Now, you know what it depends on?
It probably depends on
A scan.
Gary Ablett. Righto, Adelaide and the Bombers. because,
Adelaide are emerging and the best challenger in my view, which isn't a radical statement, but I think that they are credible. Yep. Bombers.
it depends on Friday night, doesn't it?
I like your word for the Bombers, Jason. Enigmatic.
Not quite sure. They can deliver. They've got potential, but I'm not quite sure.
But
what
they're
we're
on the
gonna get.
tarmac if they win Sunday.
Yep. Great.
The other side that is wobbly is the Hawks because we're not talking about making the 8. We're talking about their credibility and their attack at another flag under Alistair Clarkson. They've lost a game on the weekend in uncertain circumstances in that they have for the first time had 5 goals kicked against them in the first quarter for a long time. Here's their next run, Jason, and this is a difficult run home for them.
Adelaide in Adelaide. You've got Sydney there. You've also got, look at the last 3. You've got to go to Perth to play Fremantle. Then you've got Collingwood and Geelong.
Are you pessimistic?
Not pessimistic, but, I think there's genuine concern there because they're not travelling the way they'd like to be. You'd like to have a fit and healthy list. They don't have that. But there's 2 ways of looking at this. I mean, it's a great challenge that faces them now. It can either end up being a year that went horribly wrong for them, or if they manage to navigate their way through it and accept the challenge and conquer the challenge, it could perhaps be the most successful season in the history of the club.
It'll be one of the greatest grand final victories if they can do it, given the players that have missed. Have a look at this list, and it starts with a man we'll get to very shortly in Brian Lake.
There's a lot of games missed by these players. Now, Rioli's going to miss a large chunk now. Gibson's been out for 6 or 7. So that's the other thing. People talk about just getting players back, but you need match fitness under them. Now, you can look at that tough draw we were talking about as well. Sometimes I don't think that's a bad thing because if you actually get through that, you go into the finals with form as good as anyone and you're battle hardened.
Jason, Brad Sewell. His last 2 weeks had been outstanding. He looked like he played himself back into the best 18. Early in this game, another hamstring.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate, wasn't it? I don't think it's a serious one, but unfortunately when you get to this age and you've done the hammy before, it's a great concern. It just adds to the growing list of injuries of the Hawks.
Yes, it's another major challenge. It was interesting that James Kelly was rested by the Cats over the weekend, and that's when you get an injury list what you can't do. You can't give Hodgie a couple of weeks off. You can't give a number of your other midfielders off because you're basically just going to have to struggle to get to the end point, and then hopefully some players get back.
But Sewell needed the work, didn't he? So
He did, but as you say, you can't rest players when you've got to actually win games to hang on to the top 4 spot. I think last season they were in a much better position where you could balance the workload of the players, knowing that you were travelling comfortably. You didn't have that many threats for the top positions, so a little bit different this year.
They weren't their normal disciplined, normally efficient self on Friday night, were they?
That's fair. And I think the thing from Alistair Clarkson's point of view that I think would have disappointed him the most were the players that were guilty. And they were your senior players. They were your on-field leaders, your more experienced players. I mean, we all know what happened with Brian Lake, but Hodgie got a little bit over the top there at one stage. We see Stratton and Schoenmakers give away silly free kicks down there. One that we won't see, Jordan Lewis also gave one away. I mean, these are the players that, generally lead from the front. And if they're losing their composure and getting upset because the flow of things is going against them, well, it makes it really difficult for the others to follow.
Yet that didn't stop the Hawthorn people en masse jumping on Brian Lake, did it? I mean, the coach, Hodgie, Jordan Lewis, all whacked him for his brain phase.
They did, but what I would say is it wasn't about one incident. There was a period of about 10 minutes where they, as a group, lost their composure.
Well, the big news, as you said, Mike, is that Brian Lake has been sent straight to the tribunal, and you correctly pointed out that the heavies at Hawthorn, beginning with their coach Alistair Clarkson, didn't miss him in the press.
We're pretty disappointed with that 5 or 6 minute patch. let himself down and let his teammates down.
Look, obviously Brian had a bit of a brain fade there, but unfortunately that got them sparked up.
I think he understands that what was done last night is probably not acceptable at our club. He's probably been known in the past to do stuff like that and have brain fades, but.
That was pretty strong stuff from all concerned. I mean, you'd expect it from an Alistair Clarkson, but I thought when the senior players set the standard, the message was sent. The question will be, how long is he going to be out, Mike?
Look, it's guesswork, and I've heard guesses ranging from a fine, which Dermot suggested, not surprisingly, to the rest of the season, from some people ringing up Talkback Radio. My gut feel says he'll end up with 3.
Well, it's fair to say there was mass hysteria off the back of it. I mean, I think it looked a lot worse than it actually was, and I'm sure I'll get accused of being biased, but let's be brutally honest. I mean, people saying he was about to pass out couldn't be further from the mark. Because he got up straight away, jogged off, he took mark of the day about 2 minutes later. So it wasn't that bad. And if you were choking and fearing for your life, would you lie there with your arms out?
Well, I don't know, but...
You'd be kicking, fighting, screaming,
Drew Petrie is the most unlikely bloke to be trying to eye gouge someone or scratching at their face. Now, I would suspect that would only be done under an extreme provocation. Would you agree?
Well, perhaps, but did you see the sequence of events and when that happened?
Well, I saw it happen after... I don't know whether it was the first or second time. Are you saying that Petrie made the first...
Well, that's a headlock there, so that's not bad. That wasn't the choker hold there. That was a headlock. And look, Brian obviously lost the plot. There's no arguments there, but that choker hold there comes after the initial.
Had you seen that before?
I had.
You saw that. Do you think that Petrie initiated that the Lake outrage?
I'm not sure, to be honest, and that's why I think they both should go to the tribunal. Drew Petrie's been given 125 points.
Which can come down to a reprimand.
Come down to not having to play. I don't think the Kangaroos are overly thrilled that he's been given any penalty whatsoever. But it'll be interesting if they go to the tribunal.
Well, they are going to the tribunal.
Well,
don't
we know that Lake is, but Petrie isn't at the present time. He hasn't declared his hand.
Can I just say this? I'm certainly not blaming Drew Petrie for the incident.
But
all I'm trying to do is put into context the hysteria that surrounded Lake's involvement.
I understand that, but I clearly understood you as to say that Lake was reacting to Petrie's hands in his face.
No. Well,
you're not saying that?
No. I said Lake reacted. If you actually look, he gets an accidental, and I say accidental, elbow in the head as he tackles him, and he reacts to that. That's when he puts him in the headlock. And then you go from the headlock to some facial contact, then from the facial contact
to the
choking, and then from choking to players coming in. So I'm just saying we need to put it in perspective, and it was a really bad look. I understand it was a bad look, and I said as much on radio.
What do you think? What do you think he'll get?
I'm unsure. I'm kind of thinking, and again I'll get howled down, but I'd be surprised if it was more than a week.
More than a week?
I think your average out in the punter's land is about 4, but I'm more interested in whether Drew Petrie goes up and challenges, because I think he was entitled to do what he did either before or after, and I think he's the one that should go to the tribunal.
He should contest the reprimand.
I would. I don't think he should have 100 or have 95 points hanging over his head. He may be playing finals footy at the very deep end of September, and he doesn't want that hanging over his head. Let's take a look at some of the Kangaroos' numbers, though. They are incredibly difficult to understand. Their form, Jason, against the top 4 sides, and their form against the bottom 4 sides is, the rest is quite unbelievable. They are front runners, though. When they are in front and they win, they're 71% in front. When they lose, just 7%. So
if they get off to a decent start, I think they get their confidence up and they're off and running. As you say, these numbers here, Jared, surely suggest if they can do this, all the big numbers are when they play the top 4 sides. You can fluke one of them, Jared. Maybe even a couple of them you get at the right stage. You can't fluke 4 of them. You can't beat the top 4 in flukes. So you have to say, on the strength of that, they're a chance of winning it.
You're gung-ho about North, aren't you?
Well, I have been, and I've been burnt about 3 times already this year when they drop ones that they shouldn't have dropped.
But you genuinely like them?
I do like them, and I think they've got a fantastic run going home. So there's
but irrespective, the run gets you to a position, then you've got to play the
Well, they can finish top 4, I'm saying. And if they get in the top 4, they're a genuine chance.
Why is there such a disparity between their best and their average? It's a massive disparity.
And that's what Brad Scott's been searching for. It has to be above the shoulders.
Yeah, the one team that there's no doubts about, your old team, the Swans. I mean, since round 4, their form has been impeccable, hasn't it? 11 in a row. We have a look at the form ladder from rounds 5 to 16. That's right. 11. Look at they're compelling figures, aren't they?
They're not the best team in the comp at the moment by a small margin, Mike. By a big margin.
They are 3 wins clear on that ladder from round 5. That's decisive, isn't it?
Must have been a hell of a meeting on Bondi Beach when they all went and sat around and got the speedos on and told a few home truths, because since then they have just been... The Sydney Swans, I think we all expected in the first month, but didn't turn up.
That's true. And I mean, they copped some heat, didn't they, in the first part of the season?
And deservedly so.
Yeah.
And again, I think when we spoke to Ted Richards a number of weeks ago, he suggested in particular that first match that they dropped to GWS, he said, our attitude was poor. We just went there thinking we'd win.
A lot of guns in this side, but I think we all love the way they play, but they have got those individuals who... Look, there's Buddy. Buddy's number 1 in the competition for goals in the period we're talking about from round 5 to now. Josh Kennedy, second in disposals, and he's, as usual, for handballs and hardball gets.
He's incredibly consistent,
he is.
isn't he?
Nick Malcheski, number 1 for kicks, number 1 for inside 50s and the rebounds. I mean, he's such a beautiful user of the footy.
Shows you how good the rebound is too when your halfback flank is your number 1 for inside 50s.
Jared McVeigh picking up the loose ball gets. They're all over the ground, these blokes, aren't they? And McVeigh and Jack for the score assists. So wherever you look at this team, and I'm glad Teddy gets some acknowledgement here. I mean, I thought he was outstanding yesterday. It suited defenders, but he's been a very good player for a long time.
Well, you're still going, Mike.
Benny McGlynn, the other one. McGlynn was probably the best player on the ground in my view yesterday.
I didn't see much of it,
but he's just his ability to... He does the hard stuff and he gets the footy and he just turns them into attacks so often, doesn't he? So they are, to me, they are clearly the best team in the comp at the moment.
We compared St Kilda to the Cats last week.
Yep.
The Cats have gone steaming on. The Saints have dropped off. How are the the Swans and the Cats comparing?
Well, it's an interesting period. From the year when the Swans won the flag in 2005 to, and at the end of this year will be a 10-year period. Now, Geelong's got them covered, but if the Swans win the flag, that'll be 3 flags for each of them. And the other interesting thing, Jason, if you follow these teams, you'll be pretty happy. In finals, they're both headed for the finals for the 9th time in 10 years.
It's impressive, isn't it? I think we universally acknowledge Geelong as the best team over the last 8 to 10 years.
Yep.
But you're right, it's not so much the win percentage as it is premierships. That's what we play
and
for.
Finals.
But to get there and to build a list like that, you've got to get a hell of a lot right at the draft table. 2009, for
2009,
memory,
Jared,
was probably the pivotal year.
The Kinnear Beatson team were very good that year. That was when they traded. They were excellent at the draft table, but their trades were outstanding. That was when McGlynn and Kennedy went to Sydney.
And Mummy.
Now, Mummy, they've lost him, but he served his purpose in that premiership year.
They picked up Rowan and Jetta at the draft.
They did, yeah, and they've just been able to keep the balance right ever since, haven't they? They've gone like Hanbury since, and then there's Jared, your pick of the best value draft picks in the last 5 or 6 years.
I think this is one of the reasons why they're still at the very top. They have nailed the draft, and they've nailed it with their 2nd and 3rd round picks. And to put it into perspective, I had a look at the best value draft picks of the last decade, since 2004 on, and I reckon Westhoff at pick 71. Brian Lakebody, by coincidence, is the only other pick 71 or pick 70, anything that's done it well. Hanbury is a gun, pick 30. You go down, and there's a bloke with a bullet called Luke Parker who's charging. Pick 40 in 2010. He's one of the best midfielders in the competition. And I love Matthew Stokes at 61. You've got some great names there as well.
What stands out to me in that list there, Jared, and it's no coincidence. I mean, you have to recruit well to be a good team, but there were only 3 teams that had multiple entrants. It was Sydney, it was Port Adelaide, it was Geelong. And where are they on the ladder?
And it's the way they top up. I mean, Jeremy Laidley yesterday looked totally at home in the best team in the competition. And Rampy, they found him from nowhere. So they have just been very good at keeping that balance right, haven't they?
And you've got to keep your eye looking at those draft picks on a couple of the current crop. I love Lachie Neale, 58. That's a gun pick. Lewis Taylor, 28 for the Brisbane Lions. And Brad Hill as well, one of your boys, Jason, is he's flying as well. And you'd like to get him back. Will he be back next week?
I'm hoping so. Hoping so. They just need a little bit of good news, the Hawks, at the moment.
When they're talking about blokes coming back, I think Gary Ablett's coming to Melbourne to see for specialist advice about what he does about his shoulder. I think he'll put the surgery off and he'll have a crack at sort of getting through. Say if he misses 3 or 4, do you think that assures them of a finals berth?
I still think they'll make the finals, and I actually like the fact that there's an opportunity now for the Suns playing group as a whole to not have to get carried by this bloke, not have to get led by this bloke, but actually carry the can themselves and ensure that they win, say, 2 of those 3 games to keep the momentum going, should he be back in a month's time or so.
You saw the game, Jason. The numbers were extraordinary in the last quarter, given that they had basically no one available to rotate. They had just 2 rotations on the bench. It was quite incredible. I think if you were sitting at home and you knew what was going to unfold, you would have been absolutely staggered.
Oh, absolutely. But, I mean, it's there's two sides to every story, isn't there? Gold Coast was sensational. And here, what I love the fact is they communicated early to the group. Here's the runner. And he did this for a long period of time. He came out. He told them all, no changes. Don't bother coming to the bench. Let's kick the ball long. Let's kick the ball preferably around the boundary side so we can play stoppage football and just manage the way you tax yourself over the last half an hour. Have a look at the number of rotations here. And this is going back over the last 5 years. They were reduced. From a minute into the last term, there were no more. So they made 2 changes early on, then there were no more. And they still were able to fashion the win. However, the flip side of that, Jared, is how deplorable Collingwood were when they had opportunities and they couldn't run over the top of this side.
Oh, well, early in the game they had opportunities. They should have been 6 goals in front in the first half, shouldn't they?
But let's not take anything away from the courage of this group. It was great to see. And they deserved it at the end.
Yeah, they did. And it's still exciting to watch. I mean, we're going to like watching them if they play in the finals.
It was great to see the stadium absolutely chock-a-block. I'm interested in your thoughts, though, on whether there's any instruction as to the Kevin Bartlett debate about reduced interchange. Dion Prestia had a bit to say after the match. Let's take a listen.
We had to probably change the way that we use the ball, and we just tried to kick down the line, get stoppages, and just use our skills as much as we could in the game. But yeah, when they come out and said we had no rotations, it was pretty hard, and you go as hard as you can when the ball's around you. But yeah, it was just pretty hard having to rotate forward instead of having to rotate on the bench.
At one stage, there was a threatened sit-in in protest to reducing interchange, even down to 80. There was 2. Did the game unfold? Did we see more long kicks, Jason? Did you think Kevin Bartlett would take some comfort in his strong push to get rotations abandoned completely?
No, I don't think it necessarily reinforces a push one way or the other. What it does show us is that the players for Gold Coast on the night were very adaptable. They played some smart footy, they changed the way they went about it, and they made do with what they had.
I wanted to ask you, if Ablett's out for a prolonged period and misses the Brownlow, I think Nathan Fyfe's probably second in the medal at the moment. What we saw early in the season, in the incident, that incident there, may well cost Fyfe the Brownlow medal. Should it?
Well, according to the rules, yes. We know the rule's been there a couple of years. If you decide to bump, and here's a bloke that gets up and he's got blood streaming from a cut on the eye because the head's clashed. If you bump, the responsibility is yours to avoid the head.
I'm interested in that. Fyfe was rubbed out and is now ineligible for the medal. Josh Kennedy, the West Coast Josh Kennedy, hit Zach Jones yesterday. When Jones has got the footy, he's not doing anything other than holding the ball, and he's hit him in the head.
Flush on the head.
Now, he got 3 matches, Jason, which sounds pretty right to me because he's put the kid out of the game. The kid's concussed and doesn't take any further part. You know how many matches he'll serve? 1. Now, I don't care how good your record is and whether you plead guilty or not, you can't, a 3-match penalty can't become 1. Can
I think that's one of the anomalies of the system. That's where it's not right. When we see Fyfe get 2 for what he did, and yes, there was a bit of blood, but Rischitelli gets up and plays on, and then we see that a player's concussed and carted off.
Well, we spoke to Mark Evans about this on the couch a few weeks ago.
About raising the threshold?
About raising the threshold. I know Adrian Anderson has put it up to the Commission a number of times. It has been knocked back many times. They want it as pure as they can, but if in fact Fyfe did miss out in the Brownlow, that may be enough to...
Yeah, it might be the catalyst for that. One other one, Mumford. I love Mumford like everyone else does. Love the way he plays his footy, but you can't do this. You can't actually be going in a marking contest, admittedly eyes on the footy, and throw your elbow back and hit a bloke in the foot. Now, he split Josh Jenkins' mouth, right?
I think he knew what he was doing.
Oh, well. What do you think?
Well, he did have his eyes. He did have his eyes on the footy.
He gets a reprimand for that.
He was lucky. The bottom line is the MRP doesn't get you. Mike will on the couch. What about the Bombers? This was a courageous victory. It certainly breathed life back into their finals aspirations, Mike, and they did it pretty well through the middle of the ground. They locked up one of the great running sides.
They did.
And they beat them at their own game.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to be going to Port Adelaide to play Port Adelaide, but the Bombers did it, and you called them enigmatic before, and they are. That was a very good performance.
But it was also smart because they used the conditions, didn't they? Wet weather footy. You've got to change. You've got to adapt your game style, and they did that very well.
Winderlick into the back pocket. I thought it was an inspired move by Bomber Thompson. It's opened up some questions about Dustin Fletcher, but they needed some speed. The need for speed was given by this bloke because they've got so many good small forwards, and he didn't let them down.
And I reckon it probably eases the pressure on his hamstrings, Jason, playing back there, running in straight lines.
Yeah, look, it's hard to qualify because he's still going to try and be explosive out of the back line.
I reckon he's safer there than he is forward.
You need good runners and you need good ball users coming out of of the defensive 50, and that has been an issue for the Bombers. I like the idea of playing someone like that back.
Joe Watson goes down. They needed their midfield to step up. Zaha Rakas is for Mike. You've been blowing his trumpet for some weeks. Goddard, Heppel, and I thought the one who lifted himself on the weekend was David Myers. But there are the numbers for the other three.
You want your leaders, and they are their next best players after Watson. You want them to rise when there's a void, and they've done that.
They're good numbers.
Zaha Rakas was slow to start the season, but his last month's been very good.
They're really good numbers. The only thing I'd love to see Dyson Heppel do is just hit the scoreboard a little more often. But they're great numbers, and that's what we need to see from the Gold Coast midfield now without Gary Ablett. The same as Essendon's done without Joe Watson.
One thing about Port Adelaide, Jared, and they're entitled to a letdown.
Yeah, of course they are.
But they weren't as sure with the footy. Admittedly, I'm allowing for the wet conditions, but they did snatch out of the bit, left it behind a few times on Saturday.
What did he say? What's the Hinkley mantra? Handle the heat, Mike.
Yep.
And they didn't for the first time so far this year under pressure. What does it say about Dustin Fletcher? They've got the Pies coming up, who have only really got the one tall option, and Hooker's been their main man. Does Fletcher come back in?
Shouldn't matter whether they're tall or short for Fletcher. I thought they could have handled Fletcher better.
Because he can play on any size
He's done it for 20 years.
And he zones off particularly well. He kicks long to good position when he's coming out of defence. But it's a really interesting one because this is one of the first times it started to happen. But he's already been green-lighted by James Hird to play next year,
Don't you think you owe him, if you're going to rest him, can't you sort of... I mean, I thought there was...
Is it a rest?
Well, he was omitted.
So is that a rest or is that dropped?
No, that's dropped. But couldn't you... I would have thought Fletcher deserves to be arrested, and then what happens from there takes its course. Is that too sympathetic?
No, I don't think so, Mike. At 39, as a legend of the club, I think you can fudge the truth occasionally. It's footy clubs have been doing it for a long time.
Well, the Bombers have been doing it.
39-year-old, I think it's a fair call. Kane Cornes, our special guest. He's going to join us, the Port Adelaide star, straight after this.
Kane Cornes, that's close! Oh, he's got some magic about him, this youngster, Kane Cornes. Young Kane Cornes is so clean. He's come out there in the heat of the battle and 3 times he's taken the football cleanly. Something, dare I say, special about that young fella.
Number 18, Kane Cornes.
Cornes, it's a famous name in footy. First there was Graham, then there was Chad, and then there was Kane. And he's been more than able since his debut in 2001, and he finally joins us on the couch after many years of trying to get you over. Welcome to you, Kane.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, boys.
It's been an exciting year for all of you, an exciting couple of years, in fact, but just at the moment, the portrait's starting to crumble a little bit.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks, probably the last month, hasn't been where we would like it, but look, it's been a great year by the players. We've lost 3 games by under a kick, so it would have been great to get 2 or 3 of those, or maybe even 1. But I mean, you would have taken the 3rd on the ladder at this stage of the year, but we've got some work to do to get things back on track.
Just talking about that last month where you've lost 3 or 4, what do you see as the catalyst, or what areas have dropped off?
Probably just the little things, Jason. A goal kicking has probably let us down and probably cost us a couple of games. We probably haven't brought the frenetic intensity that we've brought probably at the start of the year, which we need to get back to.
There's your goal kicking there, mate. You've gone from 2nd in the comp over the first 12 rounds to 18th over the last 5 weeks.
It's surprising. We do a lot of work on it. Right from when pre-season started, we realised that this can cost you games, and we've been talking about goal kicking in footy for as long as I can remember. So something we need to address and get right.
Kane, you mentioned frenetic pace. Is it possible to play at the level that you guys play at for 22 home and away games, particularly when you do get some injuries to key players?
Yeah, it is. I think we're a fantastic running group. Our midfield is really strong in that area, and our numbers would suggest that that hasn't really dropped away, but certainly teams have come to hunt us and get after us and really pressure us. We probably haven't coped with that to the best of our ability as we did in the first half of the year, but something we're aware of, and we need to get back to playing that attacking footy that we love.
Kane, an amazing record. You're the games record holder at 283, 4 best and fairest. 9 years of the past 10 you finished top 3 in the best and fairest. 2011 is the exception. What happened that year? You ended up going back to Glenelg twice. What happened?
Yeah, it was a tough year, Mike. Matty Primus took over as coach, and probably not the first player to see different points of view from the coach in terms of the way he saw my game, which was fine. But yeah, it was a challenge for me. I ended up playing reserves at North Adelaide one day. It was probably the lowest point of my career, but in a way, it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. It forced me to go away and work on some areas of my game that needed addressing.
Like?
Yeah, look, I think just the way I was using the ball, where I was getting the footy, was going to ground a little bit too much. So at the time, you know, you're angry and you try and think of excuses, but when you really knuckle down and look at it, there was areas I needed to work on, and I did address that in the off season that year. I got really fit and came back.
Did you think you were gone though? Did you? I think Matty Primus thought you were finished as an AFL footballer. Did you?
Yeah, 100%. I thought I was gone, and if it wasn't probably for Keith Thomas, who took over as CEO that year, he sat down and had a coffee with Keith, and I told him, you know, I'd had enough, and I had 2 years to go on my contract, so they were pretty reluctant to pay that out. But Keith showed a lot of faith in me, and said that he was going to give me a fair shot. So I went away and got really fit. In 2012, I think people forget, under Matty Primus, I won the best and fairest that year, and we got along professionally really well. So we were able to put that difference behind us and get on with it.
Mike, can you just emphasise that again? I mean, that just rolled off the tongue, but that would be the best and fairest record of any current day player.
Well, Corns, this one, Kane and Warren Treadrace share the record at Port Adelaide. Only two blokes have won more than one, and that's them with 4, and the game's record holder. I mean, I'm not saying
but
that
the top 5 finishes is an incredible.
Well, top three. 9 out of 10 years in the top 3. I mean, I don't think you get the recognition over here that you deserve for that record.
Yeah, probably rightly so, Michael. I've never seen myself as a great player. I've always been just a battler, someone who does their job. Is good at stopping opponents and getting a little bit of the foot himself, but I've never seen myself, as probably that record suggests. And look, I don't tend to look back on what I've done too much. Probably will at the end of my career, but always sort of focusing on what's next and the next challenge in front of me.
As a battler, you get a hell of a lot of the footy when you want to chase it, mate. And I tell you what, you do some great shutdown roles too. What's been the balance of your role under Ken Hinkley?
Yeah, it's probably been 50-50, Jason. I think Ken understands me really well. He understands that it is pretty mentally draining playing that shutdown role week in and week out, and credit to the guys that do that in the AFL. But it is nice to get freed up every now and then and work on other areas of your game. So Ken understands that, and we've got a great relationship.
What's the potential of this group? You've played in a premiership side. You've got some terrific players around you, some like Robbie Gray, who the coaches have in their top 5, an amazing draft pick. We looked at that earlier in the program, along with Justin Westhoff. You picked him up at 71. He's turned into a match winner himself. Has this group got a premiership within them, or do you need to get some backup for key defensive zones and others?
It's a hard question to answer, Jared, and I'm not sure you get too much out of answering whether you're going to win a flag or not, or whether you can see it. I think you've got to focus on just winning as many games as you can to get top 4, and from there we know you're a big chance. You're as good a chance as anyone. So for us now, it's just about winning as many games as we can and finishing as high as we can. But we've got some serious talent on our list, and the group is as driven a group as I've ever seen. We're led extremely well by Travis Boak. He sets an amazing standard, and the young players that are in our side are really driven for success. So look, I'm really confident the next few years at the Port Adelaide Footy Club.
Did you fear that Travis Boak was going to come back to Melbourne a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Mike, he's a great person from an amazing family, and to see the way he's developed his game, not only on the field but off it, the best leader I've played under. And yeah, look, I'm just glad that he stayed. He never really spoke about his contract stuff. He kept it pretty private, but I think he's made the right choice.
It's been a massive change, a massive impact from Ken Hinkley at the Port Adelaide Football Club. What makes Ken so great?
The first thing is he's an amazing motivator. Every week I go into the team meeting before a game and I think to myself, how's he going to get us up this week? But he finds a way to get us up. You feel like you want to run through a brick wall after he's finished talking to you. So that's, for me, that's his number one thing. He motivates us like no other coach I've ever had. And secondly, he's just really footy smart. He knows what's going. He makes calls on gut instinct from the coach's box that he sees the game very, very well.
Can I take you back 8 years and the birth of the first of your 3 kids, Eddie? He was born with a major heart irregularity. Did that change your life then? Because you were obsessive about football, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. It probably prolonged my career in a way. It forced me to focus on what's really important. I was so intense about my footy. If I had a good game and we won, I'd be happy. me if I had a bad game or we lost. I wouldn't talk to anyone for a few days. So it was getting a bit out of control there. Chad actually sat me down one time and said, "Mate, you've got to relax. You've got to chill out." So the stuff we've had with Eddie has forced me to do that. It's been the biggest challenge of my life, and Lucy, my wife, she does an amazing job. She stays pretty strong for the family, but yeah, he's got a battle ahead of him, but he's a great kid.
Explain, his heart was born on the wrong side?
He was born with his heart on the right side of his body instead of the left. It's called dextrocardia, and he's got a couple of drainage issues with that, which is, he's had a couple of operations and probably facing open heart surgery sometime in the future. But look, he's doing really well. He loves his footy, and he loves being a part of the Port Adelaide Footy Club.
Can I ask you about a controversial incident on the weekend? Angus Monfries was run down from behind, and I think it's exposed a flaw in the rules that nobody can really tell you what prior opportunity is. I think the umpires were found out in recent times use 6 steps as a guide. If that's the case, that's a good decision, but there's been a hue and cry from around the country that it was the wrong decision. What's your understanding of it, and what did you think at the time?
I'm not too sure. Clearly that one is holding the ball. I think we need to get back to rewarding the tackler as a kid.
Just before you go on, Kane, did you say clearly holding the ball?
Clearly holding the ball.
Jared?
Well, I don't think it is. I think it's a prior opportunity. I think you're entitled in the game to get balance to kick. And the umpires, if they've been given a guideline of 6 steps, well, that's clearly a good decision based on what the umpires' guidelines have been. But from speaking to people on the Rules Committee, they've found out that there is no guideline as to what this means, prior opportunity.
But the player mentality is you would have thought that that's incorrect disposal.
When I was taught as a kid, if you get tackled and you drop the ball, holding the ball. I think we need to get back to rewarding the tackle because it's such a great skill, an underrated skill in our sport, and something that you taught as a kid. So let's reward the tackle, let's play holding the ball, and it'll clear up the congestion as well for paying more frees. The play will flow quicker, we won't have the rolling stuff that we're getting at the moment.
Speaking of rules, you guys are pushing the envelope, I think, as far as some set plays. And we saw one last week that was absolutely extraordinary. I don't know if you've seen footage of this. Look at Pittard with the ball under his arm. This is while an opponent's having a shot for goal. Not allowed to go to the bag and get the ball. Throws it to Broadbent. The ball's still in the air there, off and running, and it goes end to end. It's innovative, isn't it?
Very clever from Jasper. We actually get stuck into Jasper at times for not being the smartest decision maker on the field at times. We love him, but yeah, very clever.
Footy folklore has it, Kane, that you were the first person to be taken to the authorities for acting. You remember there was the legislation was in that you can't act, and if you do, you risk suspension. Nothing's happened since, but what happened in your case?
I never got a warning or a letter or anything like that. I got a message that they were looking into an incident. I think it was with Corey Enright down at Skills Stadium one day. I never got an official warning, but I mean it was enough for me to pull my head in and stop doing it. The embarrassment.
But the legislation's got no teeth, though.
Well, yeah, I don't think we're seeing as many players do it these days as they were back then. I think it's. Just the odd warning is enough to, even you guys just talking about it is enough for players.
Wasn't there an incident on the weekend where the umpire told you to get up and stop acting?
That was actually legit.
It was. You got it wrong. By the way, I was always taught if you got tackled and the ball was knocked out, it was play on. But nevertheless, big game for you against the Tigers on the weekend. You've lost 3 out of 4, as the whole footy world is talking about. We're looking forward to you coming back to the winners list and seeing how you rebound.
Yeah, look, we've had some trouble with Richmond. It's another really tricky game for us. They've beaten us, I can't remember, I think Ben Cousins' last game was the last time we beat them. So, yeah, time for us to get a win on the board. We're playing away, so another challenge for us. A big game to get our season back on track.
Appreciate you coming over. Good luck.
Thanks,
Good
boys.
to see you.
Been a pleasure.
Kane Cornes, special guest on the couch. More to come straight after this.
Certainly appreciative. Almost 4 years out of the game, 3 knee reconstructions. His father in the crowd here. Great to see him back. And Ross Lyon having a chat to him.
This boy's drafted at number 4, so he can play. He knows the sport.
He's got Morabito going past. Anthony Morabito straightens up. And misses.
Well, Well, footy returned to Darwin over the weekend, and Anthony Morabito returned to footy after about 1,400 days. It was one of the great feel-good stories of the weekend.
It was nice of Hayden Ballantyne to give him the gift, wasn't it?
Just a shame he couldn't finish. But you know what? it warms everyone's heart just to see the young man out there running around playing the game he loves.
I think the whole footy world just saluted Anthony Morabito. The amount of pain he would have gone through, the amount of lonely hours in the gym, and dealing with all the doubts. And well done to Anthony Morabito. Let's hope he fires. And the mail is he'll be back in next week, which is good.
Yeah,
news.
good.
What about the story for the losers?
Didn't they?
They did. The Demons had 1 goal at half-time, 4 at the end of the match. It's a worrying concern that, yes, they're competitive, more competitive, but not kicking a score. No one's going to turn
The
up.
weekly update on James Frawley. Now, 2 questions for me. Is Melbourne making sufficient progress to satisfy him? And B, is the coach losing patience with James Frawley?
It's interesting, isn't it? And the funny thing is, he's going to have a great decision to make because all the top teams want him. If you have
all of them?
Well, Hawthorn would love another key defender, we know that. I'm sure Freo do because Luke McFarlane's certainly in the twilight of his career.
Swans would be in the queue.
Geelong want one because you've got Taylor and also Lonergan getting on. And I'm sure Sydney would love to. And they are the kings of doing a deal. Could they pull for the 3rd year in a row, Mike? Could they do it?
They wouldn't dare, would they?
Why not?
Look,
Why not?
This is from left field, Jared. Tommy Mitchell is at the Swans. Tommy Mitchell used to live with the aforementioned Paul Roos.
Right.
Tommy Mitchell can't get a game in Sydney.
Right.
If Sydney do what you suggest they might, because they are very good at scouring the talent, they make a pitch for Frawley, could they do an exchange? Melbourne want a class.
Let's just clarify. Tom Mitchell's injured, and there's a big queue to get into that midfield. But you're talking one of the premium young midfielders in the competition.
As Roosy knows.
This time last year, Tommy Mitchell was being eulogised as one of the great up-and-comers of the Swans. His old man played there.
Well, it possibly could. If you look at their history, recent history too, Roosy in Melbourne, they were happy to give up pick number 2, weren't they, for pick 9 plus Dom Tyson. So would they take someone like Tom Mitchell over a compensation pick?
I would. Would you
Jared?
take Mitchell over pick 6?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I know
so
what
would
I'm getting with Tom Mitchell. You're getting probably someone that's a better pick than pick 6 who's still in dispute. Salary cap's going to be an issue, and it all depends on what Frawley is really offering. And we know what the smokescreen is saying. The Ambit claim is $800,000. I don't think he's going to get that anywhere.
Jared, if you can get Tippett and Franklin in successive years, you can get Frawley.
Frawley, absolutely. And if they do, it'd be one of the great recruiting coups of all time.
Andrew Ireland,
he's a freak.
He's a mate of yours, and Mike Stern's coming up with these ideas. Very interesting. Went down to the Cattery, as I said at the top of the program. Saw some interesting tactics on the weekend from Geelong. They used Pagan's paddock particularly well, but they're also using their big, tall forwards in an incredible display of confidence. Have a look at this. Just a straight kick to a man-on-man, and Tom Hawkins, in fact, that wasn't Tom Hawkins, that's
Shane Kirsten.
That's Shane Kirsten. They used Tommy Hawkins and they used Josh Caddy on a number of occasions, just kicking it to the one-on-ones and slightly to the advantage and backing in that their men are going to do the job.
It makes sense again, though, Jerry, doesn't it? Adapt to the conditions. You're not going to run and carry and have the fancy use of the football that you normally have. So kick the blokes that you know are big-bodied, strong, and are favoured to win one-on-one contests.
So they're preferring to have the test of strength rather than lead to the footy.
Yeah, but if it's pouring rain, you lead at 100 miles an hour and try and mark the ball in your hands out. It'll end up just slipping straight through.
They've got a winner in Blitzarves. I think it's courageous recruiting. I don't think anyone knew where he was going to play, but I think he's telling us his position is second ruck and tall forward. He is improving week in, week out.
They have kept the faith with him, haven't they? There were some rumblings a few weeks ago that he wasn't deserving of his place, but
big blokes
Scotty
take
has stayed
so
with
long
him
to develop, and I've seen him play down back earlier in the year and do particularly well. So I think he's just one of those that can fill any position you need.
Are you convinced about the Cats?
I don't think they've played their best footy for a month or so. But you know what? They're that good, they find ways to win games and stay in the mix.
Plenty of positives also for the young puppies. Brendan McCartney not overly pleased with one of them straight after the match.
Outside our club, everyone would look at Jack McRae getting it 25 times a game and doing this and doing that. Jack's been letting us down in some areas. There's possessions, and then there's team accountability, and there's defensive decision making, which doesn't overload your teammates, that you should make at the right time. He was actually lucky to stay on the side. So I, as the coach here, possessions are important, but not at the expense of how our team functions.
So McRae started as a sub, came on and had 20-odd possessions. It was a stinging lesson for him.
That's unusual for Brendan McCartney.
I love the message.
Yeah,
I
but it is
absolutely
unusual
love
for
it.
him to go public with that.
Well, I think he's obviously frustrated that it's been happening for a few weeks, and maybe there's a young player getting kudos week after week after week, and he said, no, we've got to put a halt to this, so he made a stand.
What about the message about Marcus Bontempelli? Clearly he doesn't want to be seen as the poster boy.
No, I don't agree with Brendan on that. I think the doggies have to milk everything they can in terms of getting exposure. If the kid looks like he's really well balanced and he knows where he's going, and with those blokes like McCartney around him, I think they can keep him in check. I reckon they need to project him.
The media love a good young player.
Yeah, we do.
You can't hide them. You cannot
You
hide
get your
them.
colours in the paper. People want to go and watch him play footy.
Yep.
I'd be saying, let him go.
Crows are coming, Mike, as you said at the top of the program. They've got some injuries. They are declaring that Dangerfield and Thompson are going to be fit. But every time we see this mob play, Dangerfield gets poleaxed. Scotty Thompson also came off with a slight niggle in the hamstring. I don't think you'll know until they run out as to whether he's going to play.
We can't play if he's come off with a hamstring, can he?
Very slight, very slight.
They're important players, aren't they, for the Crows?
They've declared that he is going to play.
Well, maybe it was just a bit of cramp, a bit of soreness in the hammy. That's good news if they can get him out there, because, I mean, when he's there and Dangerfield's there, that midfield takes on a different...
Massive game Friday night against the Hawks.
Yeah, it is.
Massive game for both
teams.
Yep.
Before we leave then, what would you do with Jeremy Cameron? Would you give him a spell?
They know whether he's fit or not.
Well, if he's not fit, he should be rested.
Yeah, but they only know that.
OK, so he's in the side. Is he doing enough to hold his spot?
No.
To hold his spot?
No. We're talking about a bloke who was All-Australian last year.
Yeah, but judge him on...
And I'm not having a go at him personally, but if he's 100% fit...
You'd drop him, would you?
I would. And I think these are the things that make young players. You don't just turn up expecting to play every week. You've got to earn your spot.
Speaking of which, you're excited about Troy Menzel, Mike.
I think he's the bit of gold that Carlton's found this year. I mean, there's a couple of others, Rowe and Casbolt.
Casbolt's arms.
Yeah, but this bloke's a beauty.
His first half was great, Mike.
Oh,
He led up, he uses the ball well, he makes good decisions, and every week he has a scoreboard impact.
Yeah, and he finishes. Yeah, no, I'm really taken with him. I mean, the family's got talent. The boy at Geelong's just unlucky, but this kid, he makes the year worthwhile for the Blues.
Quality opponent. I mean, Shawnee Dempster's no slouch. He's played key defender.
That's
he's
good
played
over
on
his head.
smalls.
Yep.
He got led a merry dance by Menzel.
And it was a shocking thrashing for the Saints. Mike, I'm just having a look here. Mike's mad minute. Mike upset about Troy Menzel. Looking forward to that, seeing as
And
you
it's
just gave
not
him
the fact that he won the Rising Star either, Jerry.
Well, on the other side of this, we'll find out why.
We were blessed with the full forwards of the year in which you played fullback. I mean, Ablett, Lockett, Dunstall. Now, I remember my memory is that you were very physical when you built up and aggressive. But Dunstall said every time he went to ground, he knew that you'd fall on your knees first.
Well, no, I don't think I've ever had anyone say that I was a dirty player. I can't ever remember ever trying to fall on anyone as a player. But would I deliberately try and belt him in the back of the head or to, crack him in the ribs and do all these different things? That was just an accepted part of the play. But the one thing that sticks in my mind, no matter what I did to Jason, it was a complete waste of time because I could never, ever distract him from the focus of getting the ball and kicking goals. And in a lot of ways, that's why I respected him as the best full forward.
Gary Pert coming up on Open Mic. Clarification is required. Angry or dirty?
I never called him dirty, but like every good fullback of the era, he had a nasty streak in him, Purdy, and if he couldn't spoil the ball, as he said, it was the nature of the time.
I think that's dirty.
No, that's not dirty. Nasty and mean, super competitive.
Well,
That's why
landing
he was
on you
good.
with his knees and belting you in the back of the head, I think that's
That's what every fullback did.
So he
and
was
he didn't
dirty.
miss out.
He was dirty.
He wasn't dirty.
He was just normal.
He'd get angry like most of them. He was a ripper.
Who do you think was the most difficult fullback?
Sauce was the hardest to beat.
Was he?
He was like an octopus, Sauce.
Righto, Mike.
Arms all over you.
We've got the right club. We're going to the
Mad
Blues.
Minute?
It is.
Look, there's a late contender for Mad Minute.
Yeah.
That's the bloke here who says that Brian Lake will get off with a week. But I won't go that far. I'll save that. You can make your own judgment on that. Now, I talked about Troy Menzel before.
You did.
Long-distance diagnoses are fraught with danger. I understand that. But I must say I was staggered when Troy Menzel hurt his shoulder, did his AC joint, against St Kilda on
So,
Sunday.
only 5 minutes
There he is
into the
there.
last term or so, yep.
5 minutes. They're only 60 points in front. He goes off and then he comes back on 7 or 8 minutes later. What does he do? He
First
hurts
real
it again.
contest, yeah.
Now, again, I'm not trying to impugn the integrity of the Carlton medical staff, but
Sounds
why
like
would
you
you
are.
have brought him back with a shoulder injury when you're 10 goals in front?
I don't know. You would have to ask the powers that be.
It's only a question, boys.
Correct. It's not logical, is it? He's a player with a great future. Though. I like him.
Can I give you the bump of the week?
Yes.
It was up on the Gold Coast, and it was a bump with a slight difference. Have a look at this. We see Grundy go to ground. He was probably entitled to be a little bit upset, and I reckon his history suggested he's going to give him one, but no, still side bottom, showed great leadership on the Gold
Teammate on
Coast.
teammate.
Yeah,
Teammate on
that's good.
teammate, got him out of the way, said we don't need to lose
And
possession.
you said, get back to your position
We're
and get
in
ready.
control, do your job. Who was it most at fault up there? Was it Clinton Young, who's copped a fair serve, or was it Travis Cloke, who keeps butchering goals from 15
Or a dozen
metres?
others?
I think you're being very unfair to single out two players. I think you would go hard put finding any of the Collingwood players that were completely blameless in this performance. You can pull out half a dozen incidents, and look, you're picking a few here where Travis Cloke missed. That's okay. There were plenty of other.
It's not
there were-
really okay.
No, but what I'm saying is there were plenty of other players in the black and white, and don't just blame Youngie for this. Kicked a couple of goals in the first term. There were plenty of players that made mistakes that either cost goals for Collingwood not scoring or allowed the opposition to score goals.
Tell me what happened with Clinton Young. Was he a step ahead? Was he thinking about the kick before he took the mark?
Look, we've probably all done that at one stage or another where you think, I've got this, game's on the line, I'm going to have to go back and kick it. And he was thinking ahead before he actually took the mark and went back. Would have been a really good kick under pressure. So there would have been 10 people on the mark, deciding the game probably. It's a shame he actually didn't hang on to it and then go back and take the
Just
shot.
before we go, Brian Lake, how many weeks do you think you'll get?
A final one.
Now, Jared, there's an item just arrived for you.
Oh, yeah.
It's in an AFL envelope. Something about... Oh, there it is. Laws of Australian football.
Yes.
Put it on when you get home, will you? And have a look at about
Look
prior
up incorrect
opportunity.
disposal and prior opportunity,
I'll
please.
see what it says about prior opportunity.
It's a new
Tell
category.
Jason to read the rules. Thanks for your company. I'll see you next week on the couch. There it is.
This has been a Fox Footy production for